Aloha and good morning, PV here. Welcome to Chapel. Well, before we get going on today's message, last week I asked you about what makes you comfortable. And I wanted to share some of the responses that I got back. The sophomores in my homeroom pretty much all agreed that a well-worn sweatshirt or t-shirt is what makes them comfortable. In Mr. Kwong's 8th grade class, 8th grade homeroom, Paige, Edward, and Tara also agreed with hoodies being super comfortable. Maya has a favorite navy blue shirt that she likes to wear all the time. Noah has a bee hat that makes him feel comfortable. Cohen feels comfortable in rain jackets, and Po'okela and Joseph both find clothing in general to be comfortable. And Mr. Kwong, well, he finds comfort in his Birkenstock sandals, which I'm pretty sure we've all seen him wearing at one time or another. So thank you, Mr. Kwong and 8B for sharing. I appreciate that. I miss seeing all of you together in the worship center, and I enjoy the virtual feedback. So please feel free to leave a comment on the video or send me an email at kvalente@kcsohana.net. Okay, so let's move on to what we're going to talk about today. I want to play a game. Well, before I transitioned over to educational ministry here at KCS, I was the youth pastor at Kaimuki Christian Church. And one of the games that we used to play to help break the ice and get students to learn a little bit about each other and perhaps see that they might have more in common with each other than previously thought was Two Truths and a Lie. So let's play. This game is very simple. Works like this. You come up with 3 statements about yourself. 2 of them are true, and 1 of them is a lie, hence the name, Two Truths and a Lie. And then you try and see and figure, if people can figure out which one of those statements is the lie. Now, first, I'm going to give you my 2 truths and a lie, and I'm going to put a link in the description below, and then I'm also going to email your teachers the link to a Google form where you'll be able to vote and think what you think is my lie. And next week I'll report back and we'll see how you do. Okay. Second, homeroom teachers, I'd encourage you to play this game with your students. Maybe not right now. This isn't necessarily a pause the video and interact with your students bit, but maybe set some time aside in homeroom. I think we'll all be surprised at what we learn about each other. Okay. So with that out of the way, here are my 2 truths and a lie. Number 1, I used to do musical theater. Number 2, I have eaten pig brains. And number 3, besides the United States, I have been to 15 countries. Again, the link to the Google form will be in the description of this video, and I'll send a link to for the homeroom teachers to share with those students who maybe don't use YouTube. Okay. Also, I'd like to try and guess some of your 2 truths and a lie, so please either leave it below in the comments or you can email me at kvalente@kcsohana.net. All right, well, it's all fun and games when lying is literally part of a game. But what about when people actually lie? And I don't necessarily mean people in the abstract or out there sense, even if in the current year it seems that our culture has a rather loose association with anything that could be deemed true. I mean, what happens and how do you feel when people you know and care about lie to you? Think about how it feels to be betrayed by those in whom you've placed your trust. Now consider when you lie. Notice the word when and not if. My word choice is intentional. Let those with ears to hear. That said, what leads us towards dishonesty? Maybe it's because we're afraid that other people will think less of us if they knew the truth. On the flip side, perhaps we're trying to be someone we're not so that others will like us. Sometimes we lie to avoid punishment, and other times we lie to avoid having to take care of our responsibilities like homework or chores. And sometimes I forget to turn off the notifications so that when my door is open and the alarm thing goes, it makes noise. So that's what it was, if you're wondering. Regardless of the specific reason for lying, we have been convinced that there is something about our current situation that is unacceptable. And we give into that temptation to paint an alternate picture of reality to compensate. That's just it. It's a picture. It's not reality. Pictures fade, but reality remains. And eventually the lie will be discovered. So how do we live honestly in reality and not in the picture painted by deception? Well, we're going to pick up where we left off last week in Ephesians and look at the first piece of equipment in the Christian soldier's kit. Paul writes in Ephesians 6:13 through 14, "Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you've done everything, to stand. Stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist." Now, if you're following along in your own Bible, you know that verse 14 continues on, but we're going to stop there for our purposes. A couple of things that apply to Bible study in general will help us with this passage. First, whenever you see a therefore, look up to see what it's there for. That is, look at what came before in the text to understand what is being said now, which is what we did last week. Our enemies are spiritual and require spiritual armaments to resist. Second, whenever words are repeated, they are important. And if you have your own Bible, I'd recommend that you underline, highlight, or circle those words. In our case, we see the word stand repeated 3 times, and it speaks to the defensive nature of our topic for the next several weeks, the armor of God. Armor, by its very nature, is defensive in purpose. Its design is to protect the combatant. Now, before we get into the cooler parts of the kit, we have to begin with a component that seems rather basic. Without it, everything is out of place. We begin with the belt of truth. Now, Paul is writing this letter from prison and is likely chained to a Roman guard from whom he is taking inspiration for this passage in addition to a description from Isaiah of God as a warrior fighting for the justice of his people. For the Roman soldier, the belt was worn over the tunic and was the first piece that was put on. In fact, it was one of those pieces of equipment that was never taken off, unlike the helmet. It was designed to keep the clothing underneath the armor bound together for ease of movement. Older translations of this verse use the phrase, "having girded your loins with truth," which alludes to the belt's contribution to being ready for action. In addition to keeping everything in place, the belt was the means by which the sword was attached to the soldier, ready to be unsheathed and used when necessary. For the modern combatant, this is accomplished by what is known as H-gear, which is a harness that goes over the blouse and holds the minimum necessary gear for combat. This is considered your first line gear, and it does the same thing that the belt did for the Roman soldier. It keeps equipment in its proper place. So, why the belt of truth? And what does that even mean? Well, notice that there is no definite article attached to the word truth. That is, Paul doesn't say the belt of the truth, but the belt of truth. Truth here refers to personal integrity, that is, living honestly. David writes of truth in Psalm 51:6, "Behold, you," speaking to God, "delight in truth in the inward being, and you teach me wisdom in the secret heart." The reason why truth is ascribed to the warrior's belt is because, like the belt, integrity of character is the truth which gives this freedom with ourselves, with our neighbor, and with God. Lack of perfect sincerity hampers us at every turn. That's biblical scholar H.L. Gouge. The thing is, it doesn't really take a biblical scholar for us to know this. Anyone who has ever lied, read everyone, knows that usually one lie leads to another in order to cover up the first lie, and you usually have to then be careful about everything you say, otherwise you might accidentally say something true that then contradicts the lie, and then you get found out. Even though we lie to avoid an unpleasant circumstance or a harsh punishment, which seems easy at the time, it seems easy to lie, we are then burdened with having to maintain the lie with even more lies, or the repression of truth. In the long run, it's far easier to live being truthful, even if it costs you at the time, than to continually have to pay the cost of a lie. So how do you actually put on this belt of truth? Well, Jesus tells us in John 8:31 through 32, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." If you want to live honestly and in the truth of the gospel, we have to hold to Jesus' teaching, which other translations render as abide in his word. Okay? This underscores my encouragement to you last week about committing to a bit of Bible reading. Okay, but it modifies the directive by linking the training to the person of Jesus. See, when Paul says the armor of God, he's not merely saying that the armor is made by God or provided by God, but that it is the armor of God himself. It's the armor that he, the warrior of heaven, wears, of which ours is a facsimile. If we're going to wear his armor, we must walk in his ways. So this week I want to expand on my encouragement to read Scripture by focusing your attention on the Gospels. Listen to what Jesus says. Look at what he does. And whenever you feel the temptation to lie or be someone you're not, remember to put on the belt of truth. If you lie, you will be bound by the lie, but the truth will set you free. All right, well, that's chapel for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a great weekend, and I look forward to hearing back from you over the week. All right, aloha, God bless.